Hey there. Picture this. You, pressed between rough stone walls, and the sweat-slick bodies of men who might be your rivals, your brothers, or just the next names on a tally scratched into wood. There's a hush in the air, but it isn't peaceful, more like the silence before a thunderstorm. In a moment, you'll discover why surviving the arena is only half the battle. If you find yourself drawn in by these stories, if you like the idea of wandering ancient corridors and uncovering the hidden costs of fame and fear, go ahead and like or subscribe, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you. Let's turn this into a global bedtime gathering. For now, dim your lights, settle in, and let the dust of Imperial Rome settle around you. Your bare feet press into the grit and straw scattered across the barracks floor. The torches flicker, tossing shadows that crawl up the walls and across the faces of the men around you. Some pace in tight circles, every bootstep echoing the tension in their guts. Others sit, back against cool stone, heads bowed in silent prayer or lost in thought. The air is thick, oil lamps and sweat, blood not yet washed away from the last bout. You can almost taste the iron in the air. Every now and then, a distant roar from above rattles the ceiling dust onto your shoulders, reminding you what waits at the end of this tunnel. Nobody here is talking about glory. Not tonight. You hear muttered Latin, the clink of metal as someone sharpens a blade, the stifled sob of a boy too young for scars. Survival, not heroism, is the word that matters. You look at your hands, still shaking, knuckles raw from yesterday's drill. You're not alone, but you've never felt more exposed. The man beside you, Marcus, is winding leather around his arm. He glances at you, eyes wide and hollow. It's not the pain that stays, he whispers. It's the waiting. He means the hours before the fight, when imagination is sharper than any sword. The barracks become less a shelter, more a holding cell for anxious minds. Marcus's words hang in the air, and you know he's right. In here, every heartbeat is a coin flip. By now, you know what's coming. The bouts above are not always the grand, choreographed duels painted on mosaics. Sometimes, it's fists and wrestling, a struggle in the dirt until one man doesn't get up again. The rules of the arena are simple: entertain, survive, repeat. The crowd wants spectacle, and your life is the price of their attention. You wonder if they ever think about what happens to you after the gates close. The silence that follows the roar is heavier than any armor. You shift your weight, feeling the cold steel of your helmet press against your thigh. It's battered, dented, and heavy. A little like your own head most days. Every piece of gear is both protection and burden. You remember the last fight, how the world narrowed to the space between your eyes and your opponent's blade. Afterward, the world seemed too wide, too loud. You wish you could leave the fear behind with the blood on the sand, but it follows you down here. Somewhere in a corner, an older gladiator rubs oil into his arms. His scars catch the torchlight, thin white lines like the cracks in old marble. He doesn't speak, but the set of his jaw says enough. You envy his calm, but you know it's just another mask. The veterans are the best at hiding their dread. You've seen one of them snap at a sudden noise, hands flying up to shield his face. Everyone pretends not to notice, but you do. It lingers. A thick, musty smell rises from the straw as a rat scurries past your foot. You tense, half expecting the animal to be a signal, a sign from the gods, or maybe just a reminder that you're all prey in this place. The barracks are a world away from the sunlit streets of Rome. Up there, people debate law and philosophy. Down here, you count breaths and blessings. Sometimes, you catch yourself staring at the walls. The cracks in the stone form shapes, faces maybe, or monsters. Your mind plays tricks. You blink, and the faces are gone. Fear is creative, you think, and it's never short on ideas. You can't help but wonder how many before you have left some part of themselves behind in this gloom. Every so often, a guard stomps down the passage, barking orders, herding men toward the stairs. His armor gleams, a reminder of power and distance. He doesn't meet your eyes. You're meat, not a man, at least for the next hour. The torchlight glints off his blade, and you try not to imagine what it would feel like pressed against your skin. The stakes here are simple and brutal. If you lose in the arena, you don't just risk death. You risk shame, mutilation, or being paraded before the crowd as a failure. Survival is the prize, but it comes with a cost. Even if you walk away, something stays behind. Some men leave their pride, others their minds. It's the price of being entertainment. You hear a distant cheer rise and then fall. The silence that follows is suffocating. You realize that every man here carries his own private burden. Some talk about the gods, others about family, but most say nothing. You suspect the silence is another form of armor. You remember a story you heard from an old Jewish fighter. He spoke of laws that treated contact with death as a pollution, a spiritual stain. In his world, killing was never just a job. It marked you. That idea sticks with you now. You wonder if Rome, for all its power, ever understood what it asked of you. The air stirs as someone moves past, muttering a quick prayer. You recognize the words. Simple, desperate, meant more for comfort than for any real hope. Down here, faith is just one more tool for getting through the day. You whisper your own, not caring who hears. Beneath the Roman arena, Imperial Rome, 1st century CE, you and a handful of gladiators stand shoulder to shoulder in a cramped passageway. Above your head, sunlight filters through the slatted wood, striping your arms in gold. The guards shout echoes of stone, pushing you up the steps. The thud of your own sandals drowns out, whispered prayers clinging to the walls. You taste the tang of nerves, iron, salt, the dry dust of old blood. The moment you break into the light, the noise hits like a living creature. The roar of the crowd is a wave that slams into your chest, forcing your heart to stutter and your breath to catch. You blink, dazzled, as the sunlight smears every color to white. For a heartbeat, you are not a man, but a shadow. The mob can paint their wishes on. You see the faces, thousands, leaning forward in expectation. There is no room for you to hide. A senator in a purple-edged toga gestures, bored and expectant, as if ordering bread instead of blood. You realize you belong to the crowd now, and fear is your only shield. The sand beneath your feet is hot enough to sting, but you barely feel it. Your hands grip the sword, knuckles white. You cannot decide if you are shaking or if the world itself is trembling. The air smells of sweat, oil, and something metallic that does not belong to you, yet. The man to your right, Drusus, mutters a half-remembered prayer to Fortuna. His mouth barely moves, but you hear each word as if it were your own. You try to remember how you got here, but memory is slippery. All you know is the present, the crowd, the sun, the smell of fear. This is not a stage, but you cannot help feeling you are an actor in someone else's script. The arena is a machine for spectacle. Every detail, from the painted shields to the trained animals pacing in distant cages, exists to feed the hunger of those watching. You hear the scrape of armor, the rasp of sand beneath sandals, and somewhere the faint whimper of a younger fighter. Even the bravest look small here. You are not alone, but loneliness is a weight pressing down on your chest. As you move to your mark, you sense the eyes of Rome judging you. Survival means more than skill. It means mastering your fear so thoroughly that it becomes invisible. Yet, the crowd wants to see it. They want the stutter, the hesitation, the moment the mask slips. That is the real show. You wonder if they can smell your panic. In the stands, a merchant's boy balances on the edge of his seat, eyes wide. Today you are his story. If you die, he will remember your face. If you win, he will forget you by sundown. That is the bargain of the arena. Life is brief, and memory is cheap. This realization settles into your bones. A trumpet blares. The air snaps tight. You square your shoulders and force your feet to move, one step, then another. The sword in your hand is suddenly too heavy. You remind yourself to breathe. The crowd's roar is a living thing, but it will not bleed. Only you and your opponent can do that. The opponent steps forward, a scar running down his left cheek. His eyes are wild, his breath ragged, but he stands tall. You read the fear in his posture. It mirrors your own. You both know what is at stake, not just survival, but dignity. In Rome, public shame can wound deeper than any blade. The clash of steel rings out, sharp and final. You block, step back, feel the jolt up your arm. The crowd shouts approval, eager for blood. Your opponent feints, and you parry without thinking. Each movement is drilled into your muscles, but your mind runs ahead, calculating, worrying, remembering the faces of those who did not make it out. Every second stretches. You hear the slap of sandals, the hiss of breath, the grunt of effort. The sun beats down. Sweat stings your eyes. You cannot afford distraction, but your mind flickers to the barracks below, the cramped bunks, the haunted looks after the fights. There is no word for what you feel, not in Latin. But the wound is real, even if invisible. A sudden flash of memory. Last week, a fighter froze mid-bout. The crowd laughed as the victor circled, drawing out the end. That laughter gnawed at you, long after the sand was raked smooth again. The arena does not care for fear. It rewards only spectacle. You wonder if anyone leaves this place unchanged. Some say the old soldiers of Assyria faced their own ghosts, haunted by the faces of the dead on endless campaigns. In their world, to see the face of someone you killed meant risking their angry spirit following you home. Rome does not share those beliefs, but the emptiness after a fight feels the same. Each night you lie awake, heart racing. replaying the clash of steel and the roar of the crowd. The silence afterward is almost worse than the noise. In the barracks beneath the arena, the only sound is shallow breathing and the scrape of someone cleaning a blade. No one speaks. You stare at the stone ceiling, waiting for your pulse to slow. The smell of sweat and old blood lingers, sticking to your skin. You replay every mistake, every close call, every cheer that turned to laughter. Beneath the burning midday sun, in the sand-choked arena of imperial Rome, you stand eye to eye with another gladiator, his face splattered with dust and sweat, pupils darting, chest heaving. Around you, 1,000 voices crash over stone walls. The noise is deafening. But in the ring, every sound sharpens, the scrape of your blade against his shield, the hiss of breath through your teeth, the crunch of sand shifting beneath your sandals. There is no script here, only instinct and the raw promise of pain if you falter. The clang of steel is close, almost inside your head. Your opponent lunges, forcing you to twist away. The crowd gasps at the near miss. Blood beads where his blade finds your skin, and you taste iron at the back of your throat. Fighting with swords is nothing like the tales told over wine. In stories, heroes move with purpose and poise. Here, you scramble, slip, and bleed for mere seconds of advantage. Every moment stretches thin, each heartbeat a coin tossed for your life. That's the brutal honesty of arena combat. You don't fight for glory, but to survive until nightfall. Your senses are cranked to the edge, every nerve raw. The sand stings your wounds, sweat burns your eyes, and the stink of fear, yours and his, clings to your skin. It's the same kind of close, ugly violence soldiers have faced for millennia. War in antiquity was personal. Swords clashed at arm's length, shields splintered inches from your face, and every death had a name. You wonder if anyone truly gets used to this. The crowd chants for blood, but they don't see your shaking hands or the hollow ache settling in your bones. In the heat of it, you act without thinking. Later, memory claws at you, fragments of faces, the sickening jolt when a blade lands, the silence that follows a kill. Some nights you wake gasping, fist clenched around a phantom hilt. In the dim torchlight of the barracks beneath the arena, you see the same haunted look in others. Old scars, nervous laughter, men who flinch at sudden sounds. The healers claim wounds of the flesh can be salved. But what about wounds of the mind? The ancients had no word for trauma as you know it. But even in distant Assyria, healers recognized the suffering of warriors as real, not imagined. There, it was said that to see the face of a man you'd killed was to risk being haunted by his angry ghost. You don't believe in ghosts, not really, but sometimes in the quiet, you sense eyes on you. The stories linger, sticky as the blood on your arms. Some gladiators joke about curses, but you hear the tremor beneath their words. The price of survival isn't always visible. You remember the first time you killed in the arena. The crowd's roar was a wave that broke over you, drowning out the man's final breath. For a moment, you felt nothing, just a ringing in your ears and a strange, empty calm. Only later did the memory return, sharp as a fresh wound. You see his face in dreams, twisted in fear. That's the part they never tell you about. The Romans don't call it trauma. They call it endurance or fate, or the will of the gods. But you've seen men crack under the weight of what they've done. One comrade, Lucius, started talking to shadows after a particularly savage fight. Another simply stopped speaking, eyes fixed on something only he could see. The barracks grow quieter after each match. The laughter fades, replaced by a tense silence that stretches through the night. Still, you fight. What else is there? The alternative is shame. To falter in the arena is to risk public disgrace, a wound no healer can mend. The crowds might cheer your name today, but tomorrow they could jeer at your cowardice. That fear drives you as much as any hope of freedom or coin. The stakes are more than life and death. They are reputation, legacy, and the thin thread of meaning you cling to between matches. In these moments, you catch yourself wondering how soldiers elsewhere endure. You've heard tales of Assyrian warriors, how their priests offered rituals for cleansing after battle, as if fear could be washed away with oil and prayer. Even the Old Testament hints at an understanding of war's burden, with laws and stories that speak to the soul's scars. It seems no culture is blind to the cost of violence, even if the words change with the centuries. Every so often, you see a flash of recognition in another fighter's eyes. A silent nod, a shared understanding that goes deeper than camaraderie. You both know what it is to live with ghosts. In the barracks, you swap stories, half-truths, boasts, and confessions, trying to stitch together a sense of normalcy. Some find solace in routine, others in the sharp tang of wine. For a few, nothing helps at all. The modern world has new names for the old wounds: combat fatigue, battle neurosis, post-traumatic stress. The terms change, but the ache remains. If you could speak across centuries, you'd find your pain echoed in the trenches of a future war. The same sleepless nights, the same memories that refuse to fade. The difference is only in who listens and what they choose to call it. After the fight, the adrenaline ebbs, leaving you raw and hollow. The barracks are crowded, yet you feel alone. Sweat and blood have dried on your skin, itchy beneath your tunic. The silence presses in, broken only by distant shouts and the soft clank of armor stacked for morning. For a brief moment, you let yourself breathe. The risk is never truly gone, but for now, you're safe in the darkness. The memory of the day lingers, thick as the dust that coats every surface. You trace the scar on your arm, a reminder of your luck and your skill, or perhaps just the whim of the crowd. Some call you a hero, others see only a killer. In truth, you are both and neither. Your life is a balancing act between violence and survival, pride and shame. The cost is paid in sleepless nights and the faces that return when you close your eyes. Beneath the arena, late afternoon, you and a handful of battered gladiators drift through the barracks. The air is heavy with the stink of sweat, iron, and old straw. Your heartbeat, which hammered like a war drum just minutes ago, now feels distant, muted beneath thick stone. The only light comes from torches flickering against the walls, painting every scar and shadow in shades of ochre and rust. You drop onto your straw pallet, armor still clinging to your skin in places. Blood, not all of it your own, cakes your arms. The sounds above, cheers, music, the clatter of plates, filter down as a dull, mocking throb. Around you, Other fighters slump or stare into the darkness. Some clutch fresh wounds. Others press their faces into their hands, silent. Here, victory doesn't taste of wine or laurels. It settles with the weight of exhaustion and a creeping sense of dread. The silence in the barracks is never total. Somewhere, a man mutters in his sleep, reliving the clash of steel. Footsteps echo from the corridor, and the soft scrape of a sharpening stone reminds you that the next fight is always closer than you think. Every sound feels amplified in this hush. Each twitch or sigh could be a sign of pain, or something deeper you cannot name yet. A bead of sweat runs down your temple, stinging as it finds a shallow cut. The wound is fresh, but already crusted with arena dust. That dust, mixed with blood and sweat, gets everywhere. It grits between your teeth, lines your nails, and clings to your nostrils with every breath. You try to swallow, but your mouth is dry, tongue thick and awkward. You want to forget the sand, but it follows you here, stubborn as memory. Your mind replays the fight in stuttered flashes. The moment the other man's blade missed your ribs by inches. The sickening crunch as your shield connected with his jaw. The crowd's roar as you landed the final blow. These images loop, vivid and impossible to silence. You know the fight is over, but your body doesn't. Your muscles tense at every imagined threat. Sleep, when it comes, will be thin and broken. You're not alone in this. Across the room, Marcus, one of the few who survived more than a handful of bouts, sits hunched over his knees. He stares at nothing, lips moving in a silent rhythm. You've heard him mutter prayers, curses, sometimes just the names of men long dead. No one interrupts. In the arena, you fight for your life. Down here, you fight for your mind. The Romans have many words for bravery, but none for what creeps in after the battle. There's no name yet for the weight that settles in your chest, or the way your hands shake long after the sword is put away. The healers might offer wine or a poultice for your wounds, but for the dread, the nightmares, the sudden flashbacks, there's no remedy. Not yet. You once heard of Assyrian priests who chanted to ward off ghosts. They believed spirits of the dead lingered, haunting the living until appeased or expelled. The Romans, too, whisper of vengeful shades in the night. But here the ghosts are memories. They come not with chains, but with the echo of your own screams. Fear isn't weakness, you tell yourself. It's proof you're still alive. The barracks feel colder as night creeps in. You shiver, though the air is thick. Someone laughs above, and the sound is sharp as glass. You remember the faces in the crowd, how quickly they cheered, how quickly they turned away. Tomorrow, they'll demand more blood. You'll give it, or you'll die. The stakes aren't just life and death. They are shame, anonymity, the slow erosion of hope. You press your hand to your chest. The heart beneath it pounds, then skips. You wonder if your body will ever stop preparing for the next fight. You wonder if your mind will. In modern terms, they might call this shell shock or PTSD. A reaction to terror that lingers long after the danger has passed. In Rome, it's just the price you pay for survival. The silence is broken by a strange ritual. One of the older men, Flavius, stands and recites a line from Virgil, voice trembling but clear. For a moment, the barracks listen. Then he sits, and the hush closes in again. Rituals are everywhere, some ancient, some improvised. A lucky charm, a whispered oath, a carved sigil on the doorpost. Each man invents a way to keep the darkness at bay. You remember cavalry charges from the stories, how horse and rider would smash into enemy lines, chaos erupting. The arena is not a battlefield, but the violence is intimate, face to face. Here you see the eyes of the man you must kill. The memory of that look stays with you. It returns in dreams, in moments of quiet, in the way your hand grips the hilt of your sword even when you mean to rest. In ancient Rome, there's little patience for weakness. If you falter, they say the gods have turned from you. If you rage, mourn, or freeze in terror, it's a matter for priests, not physicians. Dysfunctional behavior, what we'd call trauma or breakdown, gets explained as a curse, a failing, or the work of spirits. The language of wounds is reserved for the flesh. The mind's pain is hidden, unnamed. You watch another fighter, Lucius, washing blood from his arms. He scrubs until his skin is raw. He doesn't speak. The stains are stubborn. Some never come out, no matter how hard you try. You wonder if it's the same for memories. Beneath the great stone ribs of the Colosseum, night presses in. You, and a dozen others, lie on thin straw, the flicker of a guttering torch painting everything in bronze. Sweat dries on your skin, a metallic crust mingling with grime. The crowd's roar from earlier still pulses in your skull, even as silence now settles among the bunks. You stare upwards, tracing cracks in the ceiling. Each time your eyes close, you see the day's fight. Steel flashing, the glint of a blade arcing toward your face, the heavy thud as your shield catches the blow. You hear the grunt of pain, yours, or maybe his. Faces twist in agony. The arena sand rungs red and gold, mixing with the dust. It never leaves your mind, not even now, with the fight supposedly over. A rat scuttles behind a barrel. Somewhere, a man whimpers in his sleep. You try to breathe slow, but your heart hammers. The silence is heavy, but your mind is louder. Each memory pulls you under like a rip current. You see the faces of those you fought, some dead, some alive, all haunting. The worst part? You know you'll see them again tomorrow, behind your eyes if not in the flesh. The barracks are close and stifling. The air tastes of sweat and old wounds. Laughter sometimes ripples through the darkness, sudden and brittle. Most nights you listen for it, hungry for any sign that someone else is awake. You wonder if they're haunted too, or if it's just you who can't leave the fight behind. It's not something you talk about. Not here, not ever. In ancient Rome, there is no word for what keeps you up at night. No one calls it trauma or nerves. If you break down, if the shakes come, people say you're cursed. Maybe the gods are angry. Maybe a vengeful spirit from the sand wants payment. The priests offer rituals, not comfort. You're left with incense and muttered prayers, and still the dreams return. It's not just you. There are stories of generals waking in terror, haunted by what they've seen. One Roman commander, they say, was plagued by visions of battle long after the trumpets faded. He'd jolt awake, soaked in sweat, convinced the enemy was upon him. The barracks, for all their noise and stink, can't keep the ghosts out. You are never truly alone with your thoughts. You remember the first time you saw a man break. It wasn't in the ring, but after. He sat on his bunk, eyes wide and blank, rocking as if to shake off invisible hands. The others called him a coward. Some spat at his feet. In this world, fear is a stain you can't scrub out. Weakness is a kind of contagion, and no one wants to catch it. The trainers don't tolerate softness. If you show the cracks, they call it dishonor. Some say you must be possessed, touched by something evil. The old men talk about spirits that ride your back, pressing you down until you suffocate. The remedies are harsh. Cold water, sharp words, sometimes worse. But nothing truly chases the nightmares away. A single torch burns low. Shadows crawl across the walls. You try to count your breaths, to slow the pounding in your chest. Sometimes you wish for the noise of the arena again, anything to drown out the silence. The quiet is where memory grows. Teeth. You taste iron on your tongue, even when there's no blood. The body heals, but the mind keeps its wounds open. In Rome, a man's worth is measured by how he faces pain. Crying out is for children, or so you're told. If you falter, the crowd will never let you forget it. Survival isn't just about dodging blades. It's about wearing a mask so convincing, even you believe in it. Each day you patch up your armor, but inside the seams split wider. The priests offer their own solutions. They say your soul is stained, not your mind. Maybe you need a sacrifice, a ritual, a night spent in vigil. In Assyria, they used to bury a dummy, an effigy of the ghost that haunted you, hoping it would trick the spirits into leaving you alone. Here, you settle for a whispered plea to Mars, a coin tossed toward the gods, and the hope that tonight the dreams will pass you by. Sometimes you envy the men who go down quick. Their pain is over. They don't wake to the faces of the dead. You wonder if anyone else lies awake, counting scars on their soul. But you never ask. In Rome, questions like that stick to you. Better to be silent, to let the darkness swallow your doubts. A distant clang echoes, someone sharpening a blade for tomorrow's match. You tense, thinking it's your name being called. The mind plays tricks in the dark. You blink and see the arena again, sunlight blazing on the sand, every cheer a wave that crashes over you. Even here, beneath the stone, the fight never really ends. Beneath the Colosseum, Imperial Rome, torchlit barracks, you and 8 others wait for dawn. The air is damp, thick with the scent of sweat, oil, and the iron tang of old blood. You lie on a straw mat, eyes wide open, listening to the distant thud of wooden training swords and the occasional shout from a guard. The arena above is silent for now, but you feel the weight of thousands of eyes pressed into the stone above your head. You worry that your hands might tremble when the gate opens. There is no Roman word for what gnaws at you in the dark. The healers mutter about curses or blame the gods, but that does not explain the way your mind replays each moment from your last fight. Each time you close your eyes, you see the glint of a rival's blade and the spray of sand as you fell. Even now, your heart races at the memory, as if danger is stalking you from the shadows. Once, a veteran named Marius whispered over dice, "The gods punish cowards." You try to believe him. But the fear is not cowardice. It is something else, something that lingers, waiting for the next battle. In this world, you hide every flinch. If a trainer spots your hesitation, you risk being labeled weak or unlucky. Either way, it could cost you the next fight, or worse, your place among the living. The language of pain is slippery here. Romans have words for wounds, curses, and divine wrath, but nothing for the ache that follows you out of combat. Your nightmares are your own, hidden behind a mask of bravado and the dull ache in your chest. If you admit to sleeplessness, the others will laugh. If you jump at shadows, you blame the rats. You remember reading, well, hearing, a story about Achilles. Even heroes flinch at memories. Roman poets sometimes describe warriors haunted by visions of blood and loss. They do not call it an illness. They call it fate, or madness, or the anger of Mars. It is easier to blame a god than admit weakness, at least here in the barracks. In the silence you wonder if any of the others feel the same. Does Marius relive every moment under his helmet? Do the newer gladiators, still soft from the provinces, dream of home or of the men they have killed? You dare not ask. The only cure here is victory, or a quick death. Outside, the city is waking. The clang of metal and the shouts of vendors float down into the passage. You know that in other corners of Rome, healers are busy with their own rituals, herbs for sleep, prayers to drive away nightmares. But if you show any sign of trouble, you risk being cast out or punished. The city is not kind to those who break under pressure. There is a strange comfort in the routine. You rise, scrape the sweat from your body, and join the others for training. The clang of steel and the roar of instructors drown out unwanted thoughts. Each day is a battle against memory, as much as against flesh. You learn to move through the drills, to let the rhythm of combat carry you past the fear. Sometimes it works. Sometimes you can almost forget. But the memories return in the quiet. At night, the barracks are a stew of snoring, muttering, and the rustle of restless limbs. You wake from dreams where sand clings to your wounds, and the crowd's roar turns to laughter. You try to laugh along, but the ache in your stomach lingers. In ancient Rome, the healers might say, Mars is displeased. Today, someone might call it trauma. But here, there is only the expectation to endure. You hear stories of soldiers who wander the streets after battle, unable to sleep, haunted by old wounds. The city shrugs. Suffering is part of the job. Sometimes you catch yourself flinching at the flicker of a torch. A shadow moves in the corner of your eye, and your body tenses for a fight that never comes. You hide it, always. The others must not see. In this world, fear is a private affair, wrapped in silence and shame. Centuries from now, they will call these symptoms by new names: combat fatigue, shell shock, PTSD. In World War II, men who broke under pressure were said to have battle neurosis. Their hands shook. Their minds replayed horrors that would not fade. Here, you are only as strong as your last performance. The barracks are thick with unspoken rituals. You rub a lucky charm before sleep. You trace a scar and mumble a half-remembered prayer. The others do the same. No one admits it, but you all seek protection from what the city cannot name. Fear, like dust, settles everywhere. The trainers do not want to hear about nightmares. If you falter, they will say you are lazy or cursed. Ancient Romans explain bad behavior in moral or religious terms. Some blame wine, others blame the gods. No one blames the mind itself. The arena has its own logic. Each match is a test of skill and nerve. You have seen men freeze when the gate opens, their bodies refusing to move. The crowd jeers, and sometimes the emperor frowns. That is the worst fate of all, public shame, a stain that lingers longer than any wound. There is a story, whispered among the barracks, about a cavalryman who could not ride after seeing his friends crushed under hooves. He claimed the horses talked to him in his sleep. The others laughed, but you saw his hands tremble. Cavalry charges are common in Roman warfare. You wonder if the bravest riders carry their own ghosts. Beneath the arena, night presses against the torchlit barracks. You stand there, wrapped in the heat of your own skin, clutching a handful of salt. Around you, other gladiators form a loose circle. The stone walls breathe with the ghosts of earlier shouts and the scrape of sandals on grit. Sweat and the tang of old blood linger in the air. Outside, the crowd's cheers have faded to a distant rumble. Inside, it is only the shuffle of feet and the crackle of fire. You step forward, salt in hand, and toss it onto the coals at your feet. A sharp hiss, a curl of white smoke, and the scent of brine twist together. You repeat the words you have learned, half in hope, half in habit, a prayer to cleanse the blood that stains your hands. The man beside you, Marius, mutters his own lines, voice trembling. He fought well today, but his eyes dart from shadow to shadow, as if searching for something lost. The ritual is not for victory, nor even for luck. It is to drive away what the Romans call blood guilt, the invisible weight that comes from killing or nearly dying in the arena. The trainers, old veterans with broken noses and missing fingers, insist on these rites. They say the gods demand it, or else madness will creep into your dreams. Some men laugh it off, reaching for a cup of wine instead, but most follow the motions, just in case. You do too, because you have seen what happens to those who don't. The barracks after battle are quieter than you expect. No boasting, no songs, just the low murmur of men who have survived another day. You wonder if the crowd above knows what happens down here when the masks fall away. The soft glow of torchlight makes every scar seem deeper. The air is thick with a sense of waiting for sleep, for morning, for the next fight. There is a reason why these rituals linger, even as Rome invents new gods and new games. Ancient armies across the world have their own ways to cleanse the soul after violence. In Assyria, soldiers once left offerings for the spirits of the slain, hoping to appease whatever followed them home. Here in Rome, the rituals are simpler, but the fear is the same. If you do not purge the blood, something inside you might crack. You remember one of the trainers, old Lucius, telling the story of a man who woke screaming each night, unable to sleep for the faces he had seen. The others called it ghost sickness. They believed it was a curse. You think about that as the salt burns and the smoke curls upward. The silence after the fight is louder than steel against shield. You rub your hands together as if you could scrub away the feeling that clings beneath the skin. Not all wounds are visible. Some days you catch yourself jumping at shadows or flinching when a door slams. The Romans have no word for what you feel, but they know that violence leaves a mark. They wrap their fears in prayers and superstitions, hoping the gods will listen. And yet, in the small hours of the night, you are alone with the memories. A gust of cool air leaks from the corridor, carrying the faint scent of oil and wet earth. You breathe it in, letting it anchor you to the present. The salt ritual is finished, but the unease remains. Marius sits beside you, staring at the cracks in the floor. "It never gets easier," he says, not looking up. You nod, unsure if he means the killing or the living afterward. Either way, he is right. In the world above, the crowd remembers your victories, not your nightmares. They see the armor, the spectacle, the red-streaked sand. Down here, you see the other side. Some men drink until dawn, others pray, a few simply stare into the dark. The Ludi, your gladiator school, offers more than training. It offers a way to survive the aftermath, even if the methods are ancient and strange. The salt and the smoke are part of that survival. You hear footsteps in the hall, another group returning from the arena. Their faces are smeared with dust, eyes wide and hollow. They join the circle without a word. You pass them the salt, watching as each man goes through the motions. No one speaks of why, but everyone understands. The silence is its own language. The Romans are practical people, but even they admit that violence stains the soul. Their doctors prescribe sleep, wine, or the company of friends, but none of it truly heals what happens in the arena. Instead, you rely on the small things: a steady hand, a shared glance, the ritual burning of salt. You wonder if soldiers in distant lands feel the same, or if they have found better cures. The barracks settle into a hush, broken only by the occasional cough or the clink of armor set aside. You lie on your cot, staring up at the rough-hewn beams. Above you, the arena is empty now, the sand raked smooth for tomorrow. Yet in your mind, the noise and the blood never quite leave. Sometimes you dream of the fight, replaying each moment in slow motion. The clang of steel, the roar of the crowd, the flash of pain. You wake up sweating, heart hammering against your ribs. The old men say these dreams are omens, warnings from the gods. You suspect they are something else, a price paid for survival. The cost is not always visible, but it is always exacted. A flicker of doubt passes through you. If the rituals worked, why do you still feel so raw? Why does the memory of the last fight linger, long after the salt burns away? There is no answer. Only the knowledge that you are not alone in this unease. The others share it, even if they never speak of it aloud. Across the empire, stories spread of warriors haunted by battle. In the writings of old poets and generals, you find echoes of your own fears. They describe men who freeze in combat, or who cannot sleep for months after a campaign. The symptoms sound familiar, though no one calls it trauma. The words are different, but the feeling is the same. You wonder if it has always been this way. Beneath the arena, evening, you and a dozen others linger in the torch-lit barracks, still in your battered armor. The dust of the last fight clings to your skin, gritty in the sweat along your neck. Every clang of steel above makes you flinch, though you hide it behind a practiced sneer. To falter up there, where the crowd's roar can drown out your own pulse, means risking more than a wound. It means risking the kind of shame that follows you, even after you walk free. The barracks are thick with the scent of old leather, sour wine, and something else. Fear, maybe, or the memory of it. You catch the eyes of another fighter, his gaze flickering away. Last week, he froze in the sand when a retiarius lunged. The crowd jeered, their laughter sharp as broken pottery. He survived, but now even the trainers watch him with a different kind of attention, not respect, but suspicion that lingers like a shadow. You know the rules. If you break down, if you panic or refuse to fight, you are just endangering yourself. Some ancient societies, Romans included, have a word for that: coward. The stories stick. A legionary who flees the line, a gladiator who loses his nerve, becomes a whispered warning for others. Sometimes men simply vanish. You notice an empty bunk, the blanket still rumpled. No one speaks his name. The trainers say he was taken to the medicus, but you never see him again. In the world above, the crowd will forget him by tomorrow. Down here, you remember, but you don't dare ask. The silence is its own kind of death. After a bout, when the sand is washed from your wounds and the crowd's cries have faded, the worst part begins, the quiet. You lie awake, staring at the ceiling darkened by soot, and your mind replays the day in jagged flashes. The moment you nearly slipped. The way the other man's eyes changed when he realized he would not leave the arena. The memory sticks harder than any scar. You hear a man whimper in his sleep. It's a sound you all pretend not to notice. In the morning, he'll joke about bad wine or a cramp, and you'll laugh along. But you know the truth. The line between survivor and outcast is razor thin, and it's drawn in fear no one wants to admit. The Romans claimed to honor courage, but pity is a dangerous currency here. A victorious gladiator gets gifts, cheers, sometimes even his freedom. The broken gets something else, stares, pity, or worse, mockery. You've seen men limp from the arena and never really come back. They eat alone, speak little, and sometimes disappear into the city's underbelly, shadows among shadows. You wonder how many others have felt this ache that isn't just pain, but something deeper, harder to shake. In other lands, soldiers tell stories of men who lose sleep, who startle at every noise, who can't shake the feeling that the fight isn't over. Assyrian scribes wrote about warriors who lost themselves in nightmares, who walked like ghosts among the living. The words sound familiar, but in Rome there's no name for it. You are expected to harden, to bear the strain, as if the arena is just another test of manhood. The trainers say that only the strong survive, that those who break were always weak. Yet you know what you've seen. Even the toughest men sometimes wake with a scream. There is a consequence to all this silence. The ones who cannot hide their fear don't last long. Some are dismissed quietly. Others are left to the mercy of the crowd, where a single mistake can end a career or a life. The truth is, many who suffer never leave a story behind. Their names are lost, their faces forgotten as quickly as the blood is scrubbed from the sand. Every so often, you remember an old story from the city's Jewish quarter. There, you heard that even touching the dead was enough to make you unclean, to set you apart. The Romans don't believe in defilement, but you wonder. After enough time in the arena, you start to feel marked in ways you can't explain. The barracks are colder after a bad day. The torches flicker, and the shadows stretch long. Some men keep to themselves, wrapping their arms around their knees. Others brag louder, trying to drown out their own dread. You're not sure which is worse. It's easy to believe that ancient warriors had thicker skins, that you were all forged for violence by a world that demanded it. The trainers repeat it often. Rome's children are raised on stories of war, hardship, and glory. But you remember your childhood too. It had its own terrors, but nothing prepared you for the sound a trident makes when it scrapes the inside of a man's ribs. Sometimes, in the quiet, you feel the weight of all those eyes, watching, judging. If you falter, if you break, the shame will cling to you like the dust of the arena. It's not just about living. It's about surviving the gaze of others. The cost is measured not only in wounds, but in the slow erosion of whatever hope you once carried. You notice in yourself a habit, counting the cracks in the ceiling, tracing the lines with your eyes until exhaustion wins. It's a small ritual, but it keeps your mind from wandering where it shouldn't. Every survivor invents his own way to cope. Some pray, some drink, some fight harder than ever. Each method is a shield, flimsy but necessary. You remember a night when the barracks door creaked open and a man staggered in, wild-eyed. He had won his bout, but his hands shook so violently that he dropped his cup. No one mocked him that night. The silence was heavy, full of things unspoken. By morning, he was gone. You never learned his name. Beneath the stone belly of the arena, Imperial Rome, you find yourself pressed between sweating bodies and flickering torchlight. The barracks stink of oil, leather, and old fear. Iron bars rattle as men shift restlessly, each one bearing new bruises, calloused hands, and the faintest tremor of dread that never quite leaves. This is your world now, the Ludi Gladiatori, where day and night blend in a haze of training, violence, and the uneasy camaraderie of men who fight for survival. Each morning, the drill begins before the sunlight even warms the sand above. The Lannister's voice is a whip. You and the others hurl wooden swords at straw dummies until your arms burn, then spar against each other, the clack of wood echoing through the corridor. Every blow is a lesson in pain, sometimes yours, sometimes his. Sweat stings your eyes. The old ones say hardship makes you tougher, as if resilience is a muscle you can bulk up with enough beatings. But you know, even the thickest skin can split. The barracks are filled with men who have learned to hide their fear, but not erase it. In the brief lull after training, you press a wet rag to a purple bruise. The air is heavy with the iron scent of blood, and laughter erupts from the corner where Marcus, a Thracian, tells a dirty joke to break the tension. You laugh, but the sound feels brittle. Camaraderie is your shield here, even if it is thin as papyrus. You have seen men freeze before a fight, eyes wide and distant. The others say they are cowards, but you remember how your own hands shook the first time the gates opened. Shame is a sharper blade than any gladius. Still, you push on. You trade stories with the others, some true, some invented. You tell yourself, hardship builds you up. The trainers repeat it like a spell. But last night, you woke from a dream of the arena, heart pounding, back slick with sweat. No one talks about those dreams. Instead, you joke about scars and limp to the next drill. You wonder if everyone else is pretending too. Once you heard the Lanista say that men raised hard are ready for anything. Maybe that is true. Many here grew up herding goats in the mountains, fighting off wolves and hunger alike. Others, like you, were city-born, soft-handed, until fate dragged you here. You notice the difference in how some men flinch at sudden noises, while others seem to carry nothing in their eyes. Still, even the hardest shell can crack if struck enough times. The barracks have seen it happen. At dusk, the corridors echo with the shuffle of sandals and the low murmur of prayers. You find yourself sitting beside Cassius, a veteran with scars like rivers across his chest. He sharpens his blade with slow, deliberate strokes. "You get used to the pain," Cassius says, not looking up. "But the fear? That sticks. Sometimes you think the real fight is here, not in the arena. The Ludi grind you down, then try to build you back up. But the cracks stay. You remember the story Marcus told about a soldier who survived a cavalry charge, only to break down days later. Even the bravest can shatter. The silence that follows is heavier than any armor. You stare at the torchlight flickering on the stone, and for a moment you feel the weight pressing in from all sides. There are nights when you lie awake, listening to the barracks breathe. Some men mutter in their sleep, caught in battles that ended years ago. You once heard of Assyrian warriors who returned home haunted by ghosts, their minds twisted by things they could not forget. Their healers blamed spirits of the unburied dead, as if suffering could be exorcised with rituals and smoke. You wonder if your own nightmares are just as old, just as stubborn. In the dark, you reach for the comfort of routine. You oil your gear, count your scars, and remind yourself that you are still here. The air is thick with the musk of fear. But you are not alone. The others know the same terror, even if they never speak it. You trade banter and bread, share water and rumors, and cling to the fragile net of brotherhood that keeps you from falling apart. The stakes are simple. Survive, avoid shame, and find meaning in the chaos. The barracks are a crucible. Every day, you watch men break and mend, sometimes in the same breath. Some become harder, their eyes flat and distant. Others crack, laughter turning brittle, hands shaking in the quiet. You have seen men who could not bear the strain, sent away or left behind. The ones who are most badly hurt, in mind or body, vanish quickly. Maybe that is mercy. There are no records for the broken. Tonight, the trainer tells a story meant to inspire. Once, a man faced the same foe twice. First, he froze. Second, he fought like a lion. The difference? He grins, showing broken teeth. He learned to trust the man beside him. You nod, but inside you wonder how much is luck, how much is will. The truth is, everyone is just trying to hold together until the next dawn. The Ludi do more than train your body. They teach you to hide your wounds, to laugh when you want to scream. Sometimes you catch yourself wishing for a clean wound, something visible, rather than the creeping fear that seeps into your bones. The world outside thinks you are made of iron. Inside, you know better. Even iron shatters if struck enough times. Beneath the shadowed arches of the arena, in the waning hours after a final fight, you find yourself alone. No crowds, no steel in your hand, no armor, but the scars mapped across your skin. It's Imperial Rome, late afternoon, and the torchlight flickers along the stone corridors where you once waited, heartbeat counting down to violence. Now, for the first time, the gates have swung open, not for death or glory, but for freedom. You step outside, and the sun seems almost foreign after so many days bathed in torchlight and blood. For a moment, the city feels indifferent. Rome's streets are alive with market calls and clattering carts, but you move among them like a ghost. The crowd, who once screamed for your life, barely glances up. You catch your reflection in a bronze shield for sale, jaw clenched, eyes darting. The old instincts linger. You wonder what you're supposed to do with your hands now that they're empty. You try to blend in, but every sudden noise draws a flinch. The clang of a dropped amphora in the forum makes your heart leap. A child's laughter, high and sharp, cuts deeper than a blade. You remember the sand sticking to the sweat on your arms. You remember the hush that fell before a killing blow. But here, out in the open, there's no applause, only the steady hum of a city that has already moved on. Sometimes you pass the old training yard, where grizzled ex-gladiators bark orders at fresh recruits. Some men stay, turning their pain into teaching. They correct sword grips, shout for discipline, but their eyes never truly leave the arena. You sense it, the half-second stares, the haunted way they look at the sky. You realize that survival is only the first step. Living with what you've survived comes after, and it's harder to master. There's a word on the street, Rudiarius. That's what they call you now. A man who's earned his wooden sword and freedom. The title tastes strange. It means you've outlasted your sentence, but not the memories. You drift past taverns and temples, sometimes catching fragments of old dreams. You wake at night, palms sweating, convinced you hear the roar of the crowd rising again. In Imperial Rome, no one speaks of trauma the way you might today. There's no doctor waiting with a diagnosis, no term like PTSDs to explain why you can't sleep. Instead, you catch whispers. Men who break down are called cowards, weaklings, or worse. Even soldiers returning from the front are judged by whether they hold it together or not. If you weep, if you rage in the night, the city expects you to bury it deep inside and keep moving. Instead of clinics, there are shrines. You see men lighting candles to Mars or muttering to household gods, hoping for relief. Sometimes, old fighters disappear into the crowd, mumbling to themselves, clutching invisible wounds. The city has no language for your pain. If you falter, it's explained as a failing of spirit or a curse from the gods, never a wound of the mind. The relief that comes with freedom is matched by a new kind of dread. Without rules or routines, every day stretches out like a field after battle, empty, uncertain, sometimes dangerous. You find yourself retracing the streets near the Colosseum, searching for faces you once knew. Some have vanished, lost to drink or despair. Others, like you, walk with a limp or hide their faces from the world. You learn quickly that Rome remembers victories, not survivors. The crowd's memory is short. You overhear a merchant laughing about a fallen champion and realize he's talking about someone you once fought beside. Reputation is a currency that fades fast here. You clutch your wooden sword, the symbol of your freedom, and realize it's lighter than you expected. The real weight is invisible. On quieter nights, you retreat to the barracks where the walls still smell of sweat and oil. The silence is deep, broken only by the distant barking of dogs. You sit on your cot, staring at the space where your armor once hung. No matter how far you walk from the arena, some piece of it follows you. The echo of the crowd, the taste of dust and blood, returns in dreams. This is the price the games never mention. In the city's taverns, you meet other ex-fighters. Some boast about their scars, spinning tales of impossible odds. Others drink in silence, eyes fixed on nothing. Every so often, a loud laugh or a sudden movement makes the room tense. You sense the same thing in them, a readiness to defend, even when there's nothing to fight. It's as if battle has rewired the way your body responds to peace. Sometimes the past catches you unaware. The flash of a red cloak, the clang of metal, the scent of roasting meat, all reminders. You try to explain to a local woman why you wake screaming, but she only shakes her head. The ancient world lacks the words for your struggle. What would you call it? A haunting? A shadow? The physicians of your age might just prescribe a bath or a prayer. When you hear about soldiers in far-off wars, you realize that even they are judged by how well they carry their burdens. Weakness is a stain. You overhear a story about a man who froze in battle, and the word spreads like a bad omen. No one wants to be seen as broken. The city's pride demands you hide your wounds, even from yourself. There are moments when you envy the dead. Their battles are over, their stories fixed. You, meanwhile, must invent a new purpose. Some ex-gladiators turn to teaching, others to crime, and a few vanish into the underbelly of Rome. You try to avoid the places where old memories gather. Alleys near the arena, the shrine to Nemesis where fighters once prayed for luck. The ghosts linger there. Beneath the arena floor, imperial Rome, you sit on a wooden bench, breath still ragged from the fight. The stone walls are rough, cold with sweat and torch soot. Around you, other gladiators nurse wounds in silence, some staring at nothing, some cleaning blood from their arms. The sound of distant cheers fades, replaced by the scrape of sandals and the low moan of a man trying not to sob. You lean forward, elbows on knees, watching the dust swirl in the torchlight. Your own hands tremble. It's not the cuts that bother you now. It's the memory of that final, desperate moment. Steel flashed, the crowd howled, and time split in two. Now, your body is here, but your mind keeps replaying the kill. You flinch at the echo of the sword's impact, even though it's over. In this silence, you notice how your heart pounds against your ribs. The noise from above is gone, but the roar lingers in your skull. You still taste blood and grit. Someone mutters a prayer to Mars. Another man, older and scarred, rocks back and forth, whispering to himself, as if trying to bargain with the gods. For a moment, you wonder if you're losing your mind too, or if this is just what victory feels like once the rush dies down. The Romans never called this feeling trauma. They had no word for it. They spoke of courage, of fate, of the will of the gods. But the pain is real, and it's not just in your flesh. Today, people talk about PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, a mental health condition triggered by experiencing or witnessing a terrifying event. The label is modern, but the ache is ancient. You try to steady your breath, the barracks smell of old sweat and iron. A sharp laugh cuts through the gloom, brittle and forced. It's easier to joke about death than to admit you're scared of the dark, or the memories that creep in when the torches burn low. You rub your eyes, but the image of your opponent's face, twisted in fear, won't fade. Sometimes, in the dead of night, you wake up gasping, convinced you hear the crowd again. Or worse, you hear nothing at all, just the scrape of your blade, the gasp of a dying man, the silence that follows. You think you see shadows moving in the corners, just out of sight. In ancient Assyria, warriors returned from battle, complaining of seeing ghosts or hearing spirits talking to them. Then, as now, the mind conjures its own monsters. The Romans found their own ways to explain these invisible wounds. Some said the gods were angry. Others blamed curses or the evil eye. Ancient societies often turned to religion or superstition when pain had no name. If you broke down, it was a sign of spiritual weakness, or worse, evidence that some unseen force had marked you. The cost was shame, not healing. The old gladiator across from you fingers a small charm, lips moving in a silent plea. You realize he does this after every fight, like a ritual. In Assyria, men who suffered like this were given purification rites or exorcisms. Rome had its own rituals, but the effect was the same: cleanse the spirit, not the mind. The pain stayed hidden, pressed down beneath layers of bravado and ritual. You shift on the bench, muscles tense. The stakes are more than just another match. If you show weakness, the crowd will turn. If you falter, you might not leave this place alive. Survival is only part of the cost. The other part is harder to name. It's the fear that you'll never be the same, even if you win every fight. Centuries after you, soldiers in muddy trenches would call this feeling shell shock. Later, doctors gave it a sterile name, PTSD. The symptoms, nightmares, flashbacks, numbness, sound familiar. The labels change, but the wounds do not. Even modern athletes, battered by a lifetime of collisions and expectations, speak of invisible scars. The arena shifts, but the shadows remain. You listen to the others, picking out fragments of conversation. Some talk about tomorrow's match. Others argue about the best way to bandage a wound. No one mentions the dreams. No one admits to fear. But when the torches flicker and the barracks grow quiet, you see the truth in their eyes. You're not alone in this darkness. A deep ache settles in your chest. You remember the first time you entered the arena, heart pounding, legs weak. Back then, you thought survival was a matter of strength and skill. Now you know, it's also about what lingers after, the ghosts that follow you out of the sand. Sometimes you catch yourself flinching at sudden noises or staring at nothing for too long. You wonder if anyone notices. The trainers bark orders, the doctors patch you up, but no one asks about the weight you carry inside. In Rome, the expectation is simple: endure or be forgotten. You find a strange comfort in routine. Sharpen the blade, oil the shield, count the scars. Each ritual is a way to keep the memories at bay for a little while. But the silence always returns, pressing in like a second skin. Across the centuries, this struggle repeats. Soldiers, athletes, survivors all wrestle with the aftermath of violence. The arena is different, but the fight is the same. Wherever survival leaves invisible marks, the scars bind warriors together, even when their stories unfold in distant worlds. The barracks grow colder as the night deepens. Outside, the city hums with life. Merchants haggling, lovers whispering, children chasing each other through lamp-lit streets. Down here, you and your fellow gladiators are caught in a different kind of silence. You listen to the city above and wonder if anyone ever truly leaves the arena behind. Beneath the Colosseum, dusk settles over the torch-lit barracks. You sit on a rough wooden bench, helmet pressed to your knees, the air thick with sweat, sour wine, and the tang of blood. The roar above has faded, but inside your chest, the echo remains, a kind of thunder that won't leave. Around you, the other gladiators are silent. Some stare into the gloom, eyes hollow as spent coals. Others mutter prayers to gods you don't quite believe in anymore. You run your thumb over a ridge on your forearm. It's a scar, one of many. But this one is different. It's not the cut you remember, it's the moment after. The way your hands shook as you washed the blood away in a bucket. The way you flinched when you heard footsteps behind you. Trauma isn't always a wound you can see. It's the aftertaste of fear, the shiver that comes when the world grows quiet. Tonight, the barracks are heavy with the smell of oil and old leather. Someone coughs in the corner, a dry, hacking sound that reminds you of sandstorms back home. You close your eyes and the arena returns, sunlight glaring off polished shields, the sharp tang of iron, the crowd's voices tumbling together in a wave that threatens to drown you. You survived, but survival comes with a price. You're not sure when you started counting every shadow. Each time you walk the crowded passageways beneath the arena, your heart thumps at the slap of sandals on stone. Is it friend or foe? You grip your sword too tightly, knuckles wide. Even now, when you're supposed to be safe, your body refuses to believe it. The cost of violence lingers long after the applause dies. In the old days, you thought wounds healed with time and wine. But here, under Rome's sun, you learn that some injuries dig deeper. Roman generals, men who command armies, have been known to wake screaming from dreams of battle, haunted by faces they can't forget. If warriors at the top feel it, what hope do you have? A fellow gladiator, Marcus, once told you about a Greek hoplite who went blind after a battle. No sword touched his eyes. The fear simply overwhelmed him, shutting out the world. You wonder if that's mercy or curse. The mind, it seems, finds ways to hide from horror when the body cannot. You remember a time when you believed only the weak suffered. Now you know better. Assyrian healers, The kind you used to scoff at once recognized the suffering of soldiers as real, not imagined. They called it a sickness of the spirit, something that could break even the strongest men. You see it now in your comrades, the tremor in a hand, the 1,000-yard stare, the way laughter dies too quickly. The sensory world of the arena never truly leaves you. The metallic taste of fear lingers on your tongue. The weight of armor presses into your dreams. After the fight, it's the silence that hurts most. No cheers, no orders, just the drip of water from the stone ceiling, and the slow, measured breaths as you try to remember who you were before you picked up a sword. Sometimes you envy the crowds. They see only the surface, the clash of steel, the spectacle, the fleeting moment when a man stands victorious. They don't see the aftermath, the shaking hands, the sleepless nights, the way you flinch at sudden sounds. For them, it's entertainment. For you, it's survival. You have learned the difference between pain and injury. Pain fades. Injury leaves a mark. Trauma, though, it's the echo that returns unbidden, the memory that invades when you least expect it. You're not alone in this. Even in ancient Rome, surrounded by hard-faced men and harder rules, you find moments of understanding, a hand on your shoulder, a glance that says, "I see you." The price of violence isn't just measured in scars or broken bones. Shame can cut deeper than any blade. Sometimes, the real battle begins after you leave the arena. You wonder, will the crowd remember your courage or your fear? Will you? Outside, the city never sleeps. Rome's streets buzz with laughter, arguments, the distant clang of metalwork. But beneath the arena, time slows. You cling to small comforts, a scrap of bread, a story told in the dark, the steady warmth of another body nearby. These moments remind you that you're still human. There are days when you wish you could forget. Yet, forgetting is its own kind of loss. Each memory, even the painful ones, proves that you endured. The scars on your skin are a script, a record of every time you faced death and lived. Some days, you wish you could trade them for peace. Most days, you simply carry them. You think of the stories passed down by old soldiers. War in antiquity was always personal. Hand to hand, eye to eye, the taste of blood mixing with dust. There were no distant generals pressing buttons, no faceless enemies. Every fight was a gamble with fate, and every survivor paid a toll. The world may have changed, but the feelings linger. Modern soldiers return home with invisible wounds, just as you do. They call it by new names, shell shock, PTSD. But the ache is the same. Ancient or modern, the human heart bruises the same way. Sometimes you find yourself staring into the darkness, waiting for the fear to pass. You remember the faces of those who didn't make it out. In the silence, their memory sits beside you, heavy and familiar. Grief, you've learned, is a companion you never quite outrun. The Colosseum, in the end, is just stone and dust. The real arena is inside you. Every day, you step back into the world, carrying the weight of what you've seen. Some days, you bear it with pride. Other days, it nearly crushes you. You wonder if the crowds ever think about the cost. You wonder if they'd cheer so loudly if they knew what happened after the gates closed. But then, you remember, no one escapes the price of violence, not even those who only watch. In the hush that follows each fight, you find a strange kind of peace. You survived. You outlasted fear one more time. The scars remind you that you are still here, still breathing, still capable of hope,